It is another edition of Mini Chirps, and this time we're bringing back one of our two for chirping guests. He is the next player to sign with the Cyclones for the upcoming season, Brandon Yeamans. And Yemmer, it's been a few months since we talked to you. I actually remember we were together sitting where I am right now doing a podcast, and we said we have to do a part 2 to our interview because it was going so long. I think we're going to probably have to do a part 3 because we won't have enough time here either. But I guess let's just start with an easy question. It's been a few months since fans have gotten to see you. What has your summer been like? What are you doing to stay busy?
I've been training, skating, obviously getting geared up for the season. My family and I just got back from Punta Cana, so that was a nice little trip. We went for my grandfather's 75th birthday, so the whole family went, all 15 of us, and it's good to be home, and I'm excited to get back down to Cincy.
It's a hell of a trip to have, especially with 15 people going. I mean, do you guys get to do stuff like that on an annual basis, or was this kind of a special occasion for the Big B Day?
Yeah, it was a special occasion. Just with it being such a big family, it's so hard to get everyone together. Little cousins and stuff are going through hockey, so I've been through. It's hard to schedule time where everyone can go. So there's a lot of accommodations made, but we made sure it made it happen.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super happy that you guys were able to do that, and a belated happy birthday to your grandfather.
Thank you.
So you got to go there for the summer. When we talked to you last on our previous podcast, we learned you were a substitute teacher sometimes. I know you got home a little bit later in May. Were there any opportunities, any gigs to teach up in Canada, or were you quiet?
The way it worked when I got home, the school year was already ending, so I couldn't get back into the classroom. And then obviously summer school and stuff like that, they already have their full-time teachers. So I haven't been able to actually have some more placement with that. So hockey has been my main focus as of late.
There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, for you, get your head out of the books a little bit more and skates on the ice. Speaking of that too, we were, talking to different guys that have signed already this summer, and, everybody's got their own program. And I know you even had mentioned, especially now being a month out, that, even doing this interview, trying to make sure that your workout routine is consistent. Mm-hmm. Just curious for you, you're 24 or 25 years old, young guy. What does that summer routine look like? I imagine there is a little bit of time, at least at the beginning, where maybe you are trying to get away from the game, but how long do you begin the workout and ramping up process before October?
Obviously this is like my first full, I guess, season going into pro. Usually it's been school, so we start a little bit earlier and I have to kind of accommodate the timing on that. But I have been training since I got home. Nothing too hard at the start. It was more just like getting my body back into the shape of lifting. Obviously through the season, you lose a little bit of weight and like a little bit of your size. So about a month ago, I started training in the mornings down at York with our strength and conditioning coach there, because I live close by, so they were able to help out and let me still come in. And then I come home, take a little nap, eat, and then I'll go back to the gym for like a cardio or agility, anything I want to do, just at the second lift of the day.
You mentioned that this is, now going into your first full pro season. You played 30 games in the regular season last year. Mm-hmm. I just felt like you were so close with the guys by the end of the year. I'm curious if over the summer, do you get to see anybody or at least stay in touch with some of the players?
Yeah, of course. You always reach out to the boys and just see how they're doing. My roommate, Sean Allen, and I talk almost every day. So there's definitely been a lot of connection there. I talked to Mings quite a bit as well, just because we were going to run a camp down in Toronto. He was going to come down. We were going to try to put together a little camp for some of the local kids. But just the timing, and it wasn't enough, I guess, people signing up, just because we didn't really figure it out until last minute. But we will probably do that next summer when we come home. So I talked to him, talked to Cairnsey I've been shooting with, actually. So I've seen him quite a bit. McLeod, I talked to, honestly, a lot of the boys that are local. It's just good to keep in touch and just make sure everyone's doing well through the summer.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And for some of those guys, I know you mentioned Dejan Mingo, Sean Allen, Matt McLeod, even those guys have a couple of years of pro now under their belt. Whereas for you, you are still, in that sample size window. And you said that not only, you mentioned that it's your first full pro season. I mean, if healthy, this is going to be your first full playing season in what, 3 years, something like that?
Yeah, because of COVID and obviously with school and stuff, we shut down in Canada.
Yeah, and one of the things I kind of wanted to talk to you about, I don't think we really touched on this enough last year, is that, prior to college, you were in the OJHL, a couple different stops, but by the end of your junior tenure, by the time you aged out, you were an elite player in that league, a first team all-star. The penalty minutes were there, but the goals and assists were too.
Mhm.
So, last year you talked about having to fight every night for your roster spot and every day for a chance to be in the lineup. And I think people take that literally and just assume that that means dropping the gloves. But I think as we go into this next year, I'm really curious, are you the kind of guy that creates individual goals for yourself? And if so, is one of them to take the player you were in the OJHL, that point per game player, and in some cases above point per game player, and adapt that into the professional level?
Yeah, obviously I don't want to have I guess a ceiling to my game. I want to keep evolving and getting better every opportunity that comes my way. Just with myself, I feel that I can play any type of role that's needed. So obviously last year we had a deep roster just with guys getting sent down, and I kind of knew my role and what I had to do to keep myself in the lineup and in Cincinnati. Obviously with this year, I want to take that step forward and be able to be a more impact player um, without having to fight as much, and then putting more points up and stuff like that, like I did in the past in junior and such.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the last couple of years, obviously frustration for probably every hockey player, just because there's no real rhythm to the season because everything keeps getting shut down. Certainly someone like yourself who was playing in Canada where, it's felt like the restrictions were kind of worse than where they were in the States.
Yeah, definitely were.
States. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those things like for you, how do you, I guess, kind of get back into a level of normalcy when it really has been 3 years? Like even your off seasons, man. I mean, we're talking about playing a full season. I'd have to think even the last 2 or 3 summers were tough to have a consistent workout routine just because of things getting cut down.
Yeah, so the last few summers, actually, you'd have gyms getting shut down. So a lot of our, I guess, gear up would be home workouts or just going to the park and stuff like that. But with this season, and especially having the later start from what I'm used to, I've had about 5 months to gear up and get ready for camp. So I feel that coming in, I'm going to be in probably the best shape I've been in the last 3 or 4 years, especially with the longer time to get ready.
You look at that, I mean, talking about being in the best shape in the last 3 or 4 years for you, I guess you're able to approach your summer differently as well. Being a professional athlete versus, college where there's school and things of that nature. I mean, is that something that you look at? Because I can tell you from talking to a couple of the guys, Cairns, you mentioned earlier, he was one of the people that we talked with being a rookie last year. And, he did play a full season, and guys like him and a couple others cited, one of the challenges at the end of the year was just having really not played that volume of games, not just in quantity across the season, but 2, 3, 4 games in a week, 4 games in 5 days. We know that from our trip up to Canada. Is that an adjustment for you, or was that an adjustment for you and something you're trying to make sure that you stay ready for this year?
100%. So like with the CIS, you play 26 games in a normal year. The past years have been obviously modified because of COVID. So it was a 20-game season throughout the year. I played 30 games in a matter of 4 months. So that just kind of shows the sample size of how much hockey you really are playing pro. And how much your body needs to take that extra step to recover and make sure that like you're on top of your hydration, eating, all of that. And having that opportunity to play since January and then have, I guess, my first pro season under my belt has really, I guess, helped me shape my summer and what it's looking like for training, and then to make sure that I'm not maxing out when I'm coming into camp and sore and my body is already having some existing injuries. Where with school, you kind of go into camp. Obviously, you have a little bit of a less summer, but we have like a 3-4 week training camp at York. So it was a grind. Like you're going in and they're getting you in better shape, where you're coming to pro in your best shape and you're kind of just taking off from there.
Yeah, I can see the difference then. So, I mean, and, speaking of pro, one thing, and we talked about on the last podcast, mentioned it just a couple moments ago, but to, I guess, expand on the idea of fighting for your roster spot. So I imagine maybe to some, there's a level of comfort knowing that you're coming back to the same place in the sense of knowing the coaches and the city and, but you don't strike me as somebody who, there's comfort and there's being complacent. And I don't think that's you, and it doesn't seem to be you. And I think your mentality is probably to still fight. I mean, look at September, which is when we're announcing this. I think we have seen quite a large amount of the roster already revealed, and you're seeing a lot of returnees, but some guys with some pretty deep resumes that weren't here last season. So, I mean, what is your approach going into this camp where I guess, again, you may feel that you are fighting for a roster spot?
Exactly. I feel the biggest thing is to never get that complacency. Even if I'm a 5-6 year guy, I should go into camp every year looking like it's my spot, and someone has to take it from me. Which is kind of how I was brought up, and never kind of give anybody the benefit of the doubt, thinking that they're better than you or they're going to take your spot. And yeah, we did bring some guys in, and I'm obviously happy that we have a really good team from the looks of it, and Painter's putting together a good program here. But for myself and my own, I guess, personal, I can't take anything for granted, and make sure that I keep my spot the way it is.
Last thing I'll ask before we get going is, you mentioned Painter and complimentary of him. And I think a lot of fans very excited. Even recently, Arvin Atwall coming back after a 3-year hiatus from the Clones. I mean, this team looks very, very deep and looks like this is the team that could be poised for a deep run. But tell me about your decision to come back to this team, because this is not the NHL where guys are on multi-year contracts. I mean, you still had your decision if you wanted to return to Cincinnati or not. So what did you see in the 30 games here, and both being around the players and Coach Becerra, Coach Payne, the city of Cincinnati, what put that all together for you and said, yeah, I want to come back and I want to be a Cyclone again?
So the main thing obviously is the dressing room. The leadership has just been amazing, kind of welcoming me in, showing me the ropes. Been there for everything I needed, any questions, ups, downs, they've always been there. The coaching staff like Bez and Painter have been unbelievable. Obviously keeping in contact. I came down for the Clones camp in the summer with the kids, and it's just really good to have coaching and a staff that cares about you aside from the hockey aspect. And then obviously the city of Cincinnati is just unbelievable. They really know how to pack the barn and make you feel like you're playing in a really big city, and you're under the spotlight at all times. So that was another deciding factor in why I wanted to come back to Cincy.
I feel like I've done this so many times, so I'll apologize for it, where I tell a guy, all right, last question, and then they say something, and I'm like,
Yeah, we can go one more.
Dude, well, to be honest, we'll go one more guaranteed, but I know we could go like an hour based on some of the chats we've had. You mentioned the fans. I do want to ask you about this. I remember telling you, and I'll be completely transparent, I can't recall what jersey it was. I don't know if it was the Conies, if it was the Cyclones Fight Cancer, but one of our jerseys that we did an auction for, yours sold for the most, like thousands of dollars. And I remember telling you that. And when you talk about these fans, like, they embraced you and you became a fan favorite. And you know, the stats, I mean, you had 4 goals over 30 games, you know, you didn't get a full season under your belt here, but you know, I remember the education game against Kalamazoo where you scored, and, you know, these kids screaming. I mean, how cool did it feel for you? You know, you look at the last couple of years, you don't get to play a lot of hockey. Then you're in the OJHL. Now you're in the ECHL, and at times scoring in front of 8, 9, 10,000 people. And, you know, you hear the jersey number, and that, you know, you were one of the guys that fans just were willing to dump as much money as they possibly had at to have a 44 Yeamans jersey on their back. What does that mean to somebody like you know, especially as a rookie?
Yeah, honestly, it means a lot. And that's why whenever I see the fans around the rink or even in the streets, I just make sure to stop and show my gratitude towards them, and that it does mean a lot, and it doesn't go to my head or anything like that. And that's why deep down, like, I love Cincinnati and that fan connection that you can get. And obviously that was a deciding factor why I wanted to come back and wanted to continue here in Cincy.
Well, I think the fans are excited to have you back. I certainly am. And Cyclones hockey is just a little over a month away, folks. Right here, October 29th is first face-off at Heritage Bank Center. You can go to cycloneshockey.com to get your tickets. If you haven't already, you will see Brandon Yeamans there, our newest player signing. Yemmer, great chatting with you as always, man. I look forward to having you back here in the Queen City soon.
Thank you. Thank you.